Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's FPC Radio Live. Yes, that's right. It's Thursday. We were just days away from Super Bowl 58. The wait, it's finally over. Almost. We got a couple more days of just trying to get through all this. I'd like to call it's nonsense. A lot of nonsense, John. I mean, I almost wish I understand. Like, I like, for the teams, the 2 weeks in between, but good God, I wish it was just a wait, 1 week wait, because it would allow us to avoid a lot of the filler stuff that we get leading up to this game. And at this point, I just want to see the two teams play.
Did you ever say this when the Patriots were in the Super Bowl or Brady was in the Super Bowl,
yeah.
or did you eat it up?
No, look. Well, first of all, when you're watching your 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th Super Bowl appearance, you kind of that stuff's old, okay? And look, to be honest with you, I kind of thought it was overdone anyways, because again, we always kind of not criticize, but kind of remark about the NFL not wasting any chance to make a buck and squeeze every little thing out of every piece of content that they have. And look, they have a network that's all they do is broadcast football news and highlights and all that stuff. So I get it, but after a while, it's exhausting. It's like, you know what I mean? Like, it just play the game, Plus, like I said, when we're talking about, all the side stories, all the like little side things, like I think you mentioned it yesterday, there's such a bigger audience, a broader audience. So the questions are obviously not so much football related, but it's like, I don't need the Roger Goodell show every year. You know what I mean? The owners meeting or whatever, his press conference, which was apparently by invitation only. John, did you get your invite?
I didn't get my invite, and he did it on Monday.
Yeah, those kind of weird.
Normally does it like on Thursday, so he did it on Monday before like anyone was there, and he kind of slipped in the back door and out the back door, and there wasn't much there. I mean, talk about a commissioner that's not transparent at all and makes $64 million a year. I mean, the other commissioner at least answer some questions. I'm a big Adam Silver fan. He's not perfect, but he is transparent and he does a lot more media than Roger Goodell does. Yeah, it's also what's so amazing about football. And think about it: 17 regular season games, right? So that's 51 hours. Let's call it that, 3 hours per game. In that 51 hours is what, maybe 15 hours of real action. Like, a lot of the game is plays over and we've got 35 seconds or whatever in between plays, and someone runs for 3 yards, nothing really happens, and okay, we'll wait another 35, 40 seconds for the next play. So there's not necessarily a ton of action. Same thing with baseball. Hockey and basketball, since there's a flow, there's more action. But to spend as much time as all of us do on this, give credit to the NFL. They've got us all hooked, right? I mean, to the point where, once the Super Bowl ends, what are we going to talk about? Free agency. We're going to talk about the draft. We're going to talk about, filling out coaching staffs. And then before you know it, we'll be back in training camp. I mean, it really does dominate the sports landscape unlike any other sport. It's not even close.
Well, and look, I mean, a lot of it, there's a lot of reasons for that. One, the nature of the sport, it's violent, it's exciting, and it has all those elements where, like, baseball can be a drag at times, and sometimes it's very, and look, football is not perfect. I mean, we complain about quality of play all the time, but just the nature of the sport is going to create more of an adrenaline rush, so to speak, for the viewer. Which obviously is important when it comes to keeping fan base engaged and everything like that. But at the same time, it's the scarcity of product and competition. I take that back. Not competition. That makes it sound like there's not a lot of competition in the league. What I mean is there's only 17 games, and it's week by week by week. So it creates a natural opportunity for the NFL to maximize that product. No other sport has that. Baseball, obviously 162 games, hockey and basketball, both 82. And look, they both have stretches of the season where there's kind of a lull. And John, if you think about it, the NFL really doesn't have that, because the initial excitement of the new season really runs through October. And then you get close to trade deadline time for the NFL, and then it's Thanksgiving, and then the playoff race is already on. You know what I mean? So there's really no downtime. There's no dog days of summer, so to speak, for the NFL. It's just 100% from week one all the way until the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's no load management in football, right? I mean, even think back to the Patriots in '07, they're going for a perfect season. So they kept playing right on through to the final regular season game against the Giants because they wanted to get that. I mean, a few years earlier, I think the Colts decided not to do that, or a few years later, actually. I think it was in '09 when they were 13-0 and decided to start resting people. And
well, the Saints and the Colts, they were what? It was the Colts were 14-0, and I think the Saints got to 13-0.
Yeah, they were both there, and then they kind of fell off the rails a little bit. And I wouldn't say it was a surprise that they met in the Super Bowl. They were the two best teams that year, but they kind of got it reignited in the postseason. But yeah, I mean, '07, the Patriots going to go undefeated. Are they going to go for it? They did, and came also close to going 19-0. But that at least was a story there. I mean, in basketball, if the Celtics clinch the first overall seed, in late March, they're probably going to start resting guys, and the rest of that season isn't going to mean all that much. You go back to when the Warriors went 73-9, they were chasing the 72-10 Bulls. That was the story. But that happens, once every 10, 20 years?
Yeah.
Are we even going to see an NFL team be at 14-0 going forward? I doubt it. I don't think any team is that good enough to be 14-0 at a certain point to maybe think about going 17-0 in this case. But yeah, every game means so much. Even more so in college football, right? Because, one slip up, although next year when there's 12 teams in the playoff, it's a little bit different. But up until now, 4 teams make the playoff. Look at Georgia, which was still probably the best team in college football last year. They slipped up in the SEC championship game. They didn't even qualify for the playoff. So those games are so important, just like the NFL. There's really no unimportant games. Like in other sports, certainly they are. I mean, hockey and basketball is a long season with doldrums in the middle of the season.
Well, and going back to the whole undefeated, because I think that's kind of a fascinating discussion because, I think we both agree, and a lot of people have seen, at least this season, we've seen the product. Again, I don't want to say it's watered down. I just don't think, we're coming out of an era where we had a lot of elite quarterbacks, and I think we have some pretty good ones now. I'm not saying we don't, but we've talked about this for a number of times on the show about, well, when you break down, like, say, the top 5 of the last decade or so prior to this era, there's only one guy you could see right now kind of cracking that list, and that's Patrick Mahomes, compared to what we think it is now. So when it comes to going undefeated, I don't know if it would be. Do you think it would be easier to do it now? And when I say easier, I don't suggest that it's easy at all, but do you think would be a little bit easier now? Because, well, if you think about it, the competition 15 years ago, and I think, well, look, this is what makes what the Patriots did, and even to an extent what the Colts and Saints did, going undefeated that long, that deep into the season. I think the competition was far better. Like, go back to Miami, John, in the only undefeated season in NFL history, and look at the winning percentage of the teams they faced. That's all I'm saying.
They beat one team with a winning record.
Yeah.
It was the best team they faced was 7-7. Yeah, that's why I always kind of look. I'm not going to diminish it. Right. Went undefeated, but they weren't even favored in the Super Bowl, if you can believe that. I think the Redskins were like a 1-point favorite in that game, believe it or not. They did not face a team that ended up with a winning record. Now you can look at like the '89 49ers, who I think may be the greatest team ever. They went 15-1 or 14-2. They just blew out teams. Their 2 losses were by like a field goal. I think they were 14-2. Obviously the Bears in '85. You can throw all those teams in there. The Steelers had a couple of teams like that. There were 2 teams that came really close to going undefeated that didn't even go on and win the Super Bowl. The '01 Rams lost 2 really close games, and then they lost to the Patriots in the Super Bowl. The '06 Chargers, I believe, lost 2 games by a total of like 6 points. They were that close to going undefeated. I thought that team was loaded, and guess who beat them again? The Patriots. Tom Brady. So, those are 2 amazing wins.
That tends to be a theme over the course of the last 20 years or so.
I think he beat 7 MVPs in the postseason.
Oh, it's absurd.
That season's MVP. And Montana did that too, Ian. His first 3 Super Bowl wins, he defeated that season's MVP, Ken Anderson in '81, Marino in '84, and then Boomer Esiason in '88, not to mention Elway in '89. He didn't beat the MVP that year because he was the MVP.
And look, I mean, that's why I think, despite, again, they didn't finish the job, and it's unfortunate. It's always going to be but when it comes to talking about some of these elements of the Patriots run and everything like that. But you talk about that 1989 49ers team, but then you look at, like I said, what that Patriots team did, and we've talked about it before. I think we just mentioned Dallas the other day, and they were 7 or 8-0 when the Patriots played them, or I think they might have been 6-0. I think the Colts were 8-0, and there was one other team where I think they were at least like 5-0 that they faced off, because obviously every team has 0 losses in week 1, so we're not counting that, but. To get that late in the season and have that many matchups against other undefeated teams, that's why it's like, at the end of the day, you can, your last laugh is, they lost to the Giants, and you can't change that. But like I said the other day, like, I'm not going to pretend like there was something that wasn't accomplished that season to come 90 seconds short. John, it's unfortunate. It's what it is. This is part of my accepting phase. It's taken me 17 years to get to it, but I'm accepting it, at the ripe old age of 37. But the reality of it is, you're not going to sit there and say, well, just because they didn't hold on to those last 90 seconds, they're not really a great team. No, I mean, look, let's be honest. They were better than Miami when they went undefeated. Let's put it out there. Just like the 49ers of '89 are better than Miami. Like, how far do you get down the list of great NFL teams?
Right, but you do have to kind of win the Super Bowl.
Right.
I
agree.
Right? So,
I agree. But at the same time, when you're looking at it, like, if you're going to sit there and tell me, well, I don't want to do this hypothetical thing, but you know what I'm trying to say, right? Like, yes, the winning and closing the deal matters, because I do think the further you go, and this is, I think, what we saw with the Saints and the Colts, it gets harder to win because the pressure begins to mount. And there's something to that week to week. Everything hinges, all the talk. We go back to how the league is structured and how you have games every weekend. Well, that buildup every week puts more and more pressure on these teams. You know what I mean? Like a team like the Edmonton Oilers in the NHL just, rattled off 16 wins in a row. And of course there's pressure, but you're playing every other night. There's not 5 days in between games talking about the implications of the streak, or like, what would you do if you go undefeated, or da 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 da. It's in the NFL, it's just, there's so much. And so, yes, you have to give credit where credit's due, but also at the same time, John, technically they only won 17 games that season. So,
right,
again,
14 game schedule, yeah. I mean, but again, that's the one team that finished the season undefeated. So they
in the modern era,
their accolades, right? Yeah, the modern era. I mean, it happened when there was 12 games or whatever. But looking at the '07 Patriots, they were 11-0. Remember, they had beaten Pittsburgh in a highly anticipated game. After that, they never really played well, right? I think the next game, they were playing the Eagles on a Sunday night. The Eagles actually had the ball with a chance to win it, and the Patriots were like a 23 point.
Even the Ravens game.
The Ravens game
the timeout.
That, a Monday night game where they were fortunate to win that one. Then they had 2 games at home against the Jets and Dolphins, who were both pretty bad, and they slogged through those. I think they scored like 21 points in each game. Their offense started to not be as good. And then they played the Giants in that memorable season finale, and they give the Giants credit. They showed up and played their butts off. It was a memorable game, but the Patriots won. They were better that night, but they didn't look great. And even in the postseason, I remember it was Jacksonville. I think it was 30-21, and then
Jacksonville
12 over the Chargers.
Jacksonville, that was Brady's. Like, I think he had a perfect passer rating, and he was great. But that Chargers game was you didn't come out of that game thinking, oh, this team's right back where they were. You were like, well, they got to 18-0. Let's get to the Super Bowl.
But who knows what happens if Phillip Rivers is healthy and LaDainian Tomlinson plays?
Right.
I mean, I think the Patriots still find a way to win, but they kicked 4 field goals.
Yeah.
Like, they couldn't do anything in the red zone except kick field goals. I think it was 14-12, like late in the fourth quarter, and then the Patriots put together a really nice drive and Corey
Well,
Dillon
and I
or
think
whoever. No, it wasn't Corey Dillon. It was
Maroney.
Lawrence Maroney scored a touchdown, and it was okay. You kind of exhaled. That whole season was about exhaling, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like they got to win the Super Bowl, like and go undefeated, or else it's a failure.
Well, here's the thing, and we talk about like great offenses, like that 2018 Chiefs team. They were so dynamic because they had multiple players at multiple positions. The reality of it is, John, the Patriots were very, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but they were pretty close to it because beyond Brady, Moss, and Welker, they had some nice players, but their running game was awful. Like everyone kind of just thinks that they had this entire season was on the arm of Brady, and I think again towards the end of the season, that pressure started to mount, and they started to get tense, and I think they've actually some of them have actually spoken a little bit to that, in recent years. Obviously it's been a long time since that season's actually was played. So I think obviously players are now more open about talking about it. But that pressure is real. And like I said, I mean that's why the discussion about, well, would it have been better had they lost one of those games like to the Ravens? Maybe, John. I mean, maybe it recenters them. And I mean, what's the difference if they're 15-1 versus 16-0? Well, obviously you're not talking about the pursuit of perfection. Remember that? Pursuit of perfection. Oh my God.
A little alliteration there.
Yeah.
But look, the 85 Bears were as dominant as any team I've ever seen, and they lost the Monday night game to Dan Marino and the Miami Dolphins. And then after that, they still struggled a little bit, but once the postseason came, they just blew out everybody.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't score against them. They scored at will. It was, and sometimes when you look at these all-time great teams, you have to look at what they did in the postseason. Like I always reference the 89 49ers. I believe they outscored their opposition by like 90 points in those three games. They like blew out Minnesota, the Rams, and the Broncos. The games weren't even close. I mean, it was over in the middle of the second quarter. That's real dominant. So, you kind of look at that and say, well, that team obviously was special. So, I think it's going to be difficult to pull this off now. It's odd saying this. First of all, there's an extra round in the playoffs. So unless you have the best record in the conference, you're going to have to win 3 games to get.
If you go 17-0, I think it's safe to say,
right. But let's okay. So here's the thing, though. In 04, let's say that they had a 7th team in the playoffs in 04. The Patriots weren't the 1 seed. Pittsburgh was, so the Patriots would have had to win 3 games to get to the Super Bowl that year if you had the current format. So, and I also think, let me put it this way: there's still a lot of bad teams in the NFL. But there's a lot of really mediocre teams that can still trip you up.
Right.
Like I think at times the league felt top heavy. Look, Ian, growing up, there was no free agency. Like every year, and again, I'm old, I'm 60 years old, but every year it was the Dolphins, the Steelers, the Raiders. Like it was automatic that they were going to be in the playoffs, and like maybe the Bengals or there'd be some other team, the Browns. Someone else would step up. One year, O.J. Simpson led the Bills to the playoffs. That's what it was. Like your team had no chance to get in, and now, because it's a little deeper league in a sense that there's a lot of mediocre teams, they can beat you. And especially within the division when you face them twice a year. It's like people talked about the AFC being weak, and it wasn't a great division during Brady's run. They only swept the division in the regular season twice.
Yeah.
It's not like they got fat on that division. They were also winning 75% of the games within the conference and during day games, during night games, on Thursday, on Saturday, on Sunday, whatever it was, whatever you want to dictate, they covered that.
I thought you're going to go into some Dr. Seuss rhyming scheme there.
Yeah, pretty much. I was trying. I'm just not a natural rapper, but maybe in my old age I will be.
Yeah, well, I can only hope is what it is. But yeah, look, and the point being, I guess, to bring it back around to the actual game that's being played here in a couple of days, as great as say San Francisco was, and I think obviously no one's saying that the Chiefs aren't great, but obviously they didn't have the type of regular season that you would come to expect. Certainly not like they've had it the last couple of seasons. But even San Francisco, everyone who expected throughout the year was going to be the best team, they lost 3 in a row. And to teams
12-5 right this year, and the Chiefs were 11-6. 2 years ago, the Bengals were 10-7, and the Rams were 11-6. Last year, you got 2 14-3 teams, but they still lost 3 games. I can't see anybody putting together a roster, because again, if you're paying the quarterback a lot, maybe it becomes difficult to surround them with a lot. If you're not paying the quarterback a lot, you have a great roster, maybe you don't have a real great quarterback. So I think it's going to be increasingly difficult to see even a 1 or 2 loss team. We just don't see that very often anymore.
Well, and let's put it this way. Maybe this will be proven false down the line, but part of that is, and we've kind of talked about it with how the game is played now. It allows, we talk about more mediocre teams, but I think that's a direct relation to more. I hate saying the word easier because it's not easier, but it's an easier game for quarterbacks. So 15, 20 years ago, if you had an elite quarterback, you separate that, again, Brady and Manning dominated a conference for nearly 15 years because they were so much better than the next group of quarterbacks. Nowadays, again, you have Derek Carr throwing for 400 yards. You know what I mean? Like that's mediocre quarterbacks are elevated more, I think, now than what they were before. And that creates more of a uncertainty and improbable or unpredictability when it comes to games like that. So that's why I think, So
you get in a game and all of a sudden, Derek Carr lights you up and you lose.
Yeah. And
or whoever, and that can happen.
Well, because like I said, I mean, you would think that despite what the Patriots had to face, because like I said, we brought up that early season schedule and they struggled down the stretch, sure, but they beat some really great teams, and I just don't think that's something that would happen now, So, either way, so all right, we'll be back tomorrow. We're gonna give our picks, maybe do some prop bets, and have some fun and get us all geared up for Super Bowl 58 on Sunday. So, thank you everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you then.